Did you know that you can decipher other people's thoughts with just 3 simple strategies? Let's take a look at what these strategies are and how to apply them. These skills are essential to overcoming any circumstance because mastering them makes interpreting and understanding other people's thoughts much easier. Consider a story with a Stoic theme that illustrates how to decipher other people's thoughts. The story unfolds as follows. In an ancient village lived 2 brothers. The older brother was blind and spent most of his time at home, while the younger brother practiced farming. They often found their field being ravaged by wild animals. The younger brother, concerned about this state of affairs, finally came up with a solution. He thought, why not ask my blind brother to help scare the animals away from the field? He could be in the midst of the crops and be alert when he heard any sound made by the animals and thus protect the crops. After some thought, the younger brother built a small hut in the field and moved the older brother there, explaining, if you hear any suspicious noise, shout and scare the animals away. It will save our crops. The older brother agreed to the suggestion and began to fulfill his role in the field. Every time he heard sounds made by the animals, he would let out a shout to scare them away, and this went on for several days. The deer quickly crossed the field, damaging part of the fence, and ran away. Shortly thereafter, the king arrived on the scene in pursuit of the deer. The monarch turned to his blind brother and asked if he had seen the deer passing by. The blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, I am blind. How can I see a deer? However, I can assure you that a creature fleeing from my field is not worth your hunting. You are wasting your efforts." The king was stunned by the blind brother's words and began to question him about his knowledge. He doubted that the blind brother was telling the truth. After all, despite his blindness, he had expressed an opinion about the significance of the deer. To this the blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, the creature you are pursuing is actually pregnant. I don't recall a monarch ever pursuing a pregnant doe. Therefore, I believe your efforts are futile and not worth wasting your energy on her." The king was astonished to hear this and could not understand how the blind man could determine the condition of the fawn. He wondered how a man without sight could be so sure. Motivated by a desire to be sure, he ordered his commander, "Catch this animal alive. I need to see if she is really pregnant." The blind brother seemed very convinced. "I need to investigate this, please." The commander received an order from the king and went to carry it out. When he returned, he confirmed to the king that the blind brother was right and that the fawn was indeed pregnant. The king, full of amazement, could not understand how the blind man knew that the fawn was pregnant. He wondered how the blind man could know this, how he could be so sure. He asked his brother to clear up the mystery. The king said, "I may doubt that you are really blind, but I have come to ask you a question. Are you willing to give me a truthful answer to it?" The blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, ask me anything, and I will answer quite truthfully." The monarch said, "You are a man of outstanding insight and seem to have a deep understanding of various matters. I summoned you today to find out if my consort is cheating on me." The blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, what made you ask such a question? Your union has lasted for many years, so why do you have such doubts now?" However, the king insisted, "You must answer this question, or you will face the death penalty." Before the monarch's threat, the blind brother said, "Your Majesty, in order to give you the answer you seek, I need you to fulfill one request of mine." The king asked, "What is it?" The blind brother replied, "Give me this. I need to be alone in a room with your wife." At first the king was displeased with this suggestion, but finally agreed and ordered his commander to leave the blind brother and the queen alone in the room. At this point, the blind brother expressed his intention to make physical contact with the queen. The blind brother, having reversed the situation, was able to escape and appeared before the king. He told the king, "Your Majesty, your wife is not faithful to you." Enraged, the king drew his sword and went to the queen, warning her that any lie would lead to her execution. The queen questioned her fidelity, to which she replied, "Your Majesty, may you take my life, but without relief." Confirming the truthfulness of the blind brother's words, the king, hearing this, quickly approached him and asked how he knew of his wife's treason. The blind man replied, "Your Majesty, it was very simple. I told your wife of my desire to touch her, and her reaction was so violent that she began to attack me instead of rejecting me. She preferred violence to rejection." Continuing his questioning, the king exclaimed, "Your insight is admirable. Let us continue." Calling for further dialogue, the king asked another question. "Tell me, am I really my father's son or the son of another man?" To which the blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, the mystery of my blindness has dissipated." Nevertheless, the king insisted, "No, I need a definite answer, or else doubt will consume me. I want to know the truth." The blind brother replied, "My blindness is congenital. If I had sight, I could easily understand the thoughts of others. The mind has its own language, which is reflected in the movements of the body." Thus, by solving riddles, the king and the blind brother were able to discover truth and understanding. Every word and action became a clue, allowing them to see the world through the lens of truth and understanding. Understanding other people's thoughts requires the ability to focus on the present moment. If you worry about the future, you will never be able to grasp another person's body language and therefore will not be able to understand their thoughts. Now, Your Majesty, let's move on to the third technique. Before I reveal it, it is important that you focus your mind. We can understand other people's thoughts, especially if they are also focused on the present. It is important to bring your mind into the present moment to catch their thoughts. Continuing with the third technique, the blind brother told King that in order to understand someone's thoughts, you need to pay attention to the voice. The voice can tell you a lot about a person's thoughts and feelings. For example, excitement and nervousness are expressed in a fast, excited voice, while calmness and confidence are expressed in a slow, relaxed tone. The voice can also express emotions, such as sighs, screams, or hearty laughter. By observing the articulation of words and intonation, you can easily understand another person's thoughts and feelings.